Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to my official SEC 2022 college football tier rankings, where I'm going to be putting each of these teams into one of 6 different tiers. These are the exact same tiers I did yesterday for the Big Ten. So we've got national title contenders, which, obviously would be the best of the best. Conference contenders, so their ceiling is not a national title, but they could contend in the SEC. We've got above average teams. These teams win, maybe 7, 8 games. Average teams, you're looking at maybe 5, 6, or 7 win type teams. Below average are like 3 or 4 win teams. And then the worst of the worst is going to be teams that legitimately could go winless in the SEC. So those are just the tiers. Let's get right into it. I'm just going to go right in a row, starting with LSU. And LSU is a team that I always say it, I just do not understand the culture fit of Brian Kelly with LSU. It's nothing against LSU. They're very talented. They've got a really good young receiver, Keyshawn Butte. Jaden Daniels, the transfer quarterback from Arizona State, is talented, and he does have significant college experience playing 3 years with Arizona State. But this LSU team, I just do not like the vibe. Brian Kelly, the culture fit is horrible. It's oil and water. I've got Brian Kelly getting fired probably after 3 years with LSU. I know he signed that, I don't know what it was, 8-year deal with LSU or whatever. I think he gets fired very quickly. It's a horrible fit. And to me, LSU is a 6-6 type team in the tough SEC West personally. So I'm going to go, straight average, straight 6-6 type team to me. That's the current vibe I'm getting. I know Jaden Daniels is a talented quarterback. They've got, they recruit well. They always recruit well. But even, they're a really up and down team. It always seems like they're either a national title contender or they're 5-7 or 6-6. And the last few years, they've been 6-6. So that's what I think they're going to go this year with Brian Kelly coming in. Although I will say, Brian Kelly is an upgrade from Ed Orgeron. I'll say this. I really do applaud LSU for realizing Ed Orgeron had no clue what he was doing and completely lucked in to a national title due to Joe Burrow and Joe Brady. So it's like they're being proactive. They realize that Ed Orgeron, he got completely lucky. There's no reason to keep him. He has no clue what he's doing. So I like that LSU moved on from Ed Orgeron. I just don't like the fit of Brian Kelly personally. Of course, it's just my opinion. We'll see what happens. Next, we have Florida. So to me, Florida fits perfectly in this above average tier. Some of these teams, especially the SEC teams, are going to be very tough to rank due to the significant roster turnover. With Florida, it's not really the roster turnover. It's the quarterback questions. Anthony Richardson, how good is he? Anthony Richardson has the upside to make Florida a legitimate conference contender. I could see them beating Georgia in that neutral site game they always play in Jacksonville if Anthony Richardson is the real deal. They've got a major non-conference game week 1 at home against Utah. If they get that win, it would be huge for the SEC. But I think Florida fits perfectly in maybe that 7 or 8 win type range right now. It's tough to project how good Anthony Richardson can be. We know he's an elite athlete. Florida has a good, talented team. They've got a good defense with a really, superstar defensive tackle. So I'll say above average. That seems like a very good spot for them at this point. Next, we do have Vanderbilt, and they are one of the worst Power 5 teams. I don't think I would call them, well, maybe they are the worst at this point. I don't know. You've got Indiana down there as well, a few other teams. But Vanderbilt, I would set the over-under on conference wins for them at 0.5 maybe. I mean, it's real bad. It's tough. You play in a very hard, actually the SEC East is not that tough. They're just a horrible team. Vanderbilt is terrible. They're an academic school, and the Vanderbilt situation is going to be really interesting. What does the SEC do with Vanderbilt if they keep being this historically bad? I mean, there just seems to be no end in sight. They're not recruiting any better. You're adding 2 really good teams to the conference in Texas and Oklahoma in the year 2025. Does Vanderbilt just keep losing 11 games every year? Is that it? They're in some purgatory right now. It's a downward spiral. that they can't seem to get out of. Next, we have Texas A&M. This is definitely a high upside team, but they're extremely young. I do not think they're a conference contender. I would probably slightly move them in front of Florida. So we'll put them in the above average right now. Could I see them winning 9 games? Absolutely. But again, I always caution people with Texas A&M. They're about a year away. They signed the greatest recruiting class in history. We know that. But all of these true freshmen, it normally takes a year for these kids to really develop and become superstar players. So with Texas A&M, they've also got, breaking in probably a new quarterback. We'll have to see that. I would say at this point, they're fringe, they're above average. I probably would. I don't know, man. I like Florida because of Anthony Richardson. It's just so tough to rank Florida because I don't know how good he is, but I might just keep Florida in front of them. I think both of these teams are probably 8-9 win teams, but you know what? I might move Florida up just due to the fact that they're in the East. And I could see them maybe, you know what, we're going to move Florida up. It's not that Florida's that much better than Texas A&M. It's just, Texas A&M's in the much tougher division than Florida. So Texas A&M, they're a year away. They'll probably win 8 games. I think a fair preseason AP rank for them is like 14th or 15. We know they're one of the most talented rosters in college football, but all of those kids are extremely young. Most of them are true freshmen, and it's not like they have a returning superstar quarterback they can bank on. So that is my reasoning for putting them in the upper echelon of above average, probably like an 8-win team this year. Next, we have Missouri. I think they fit the below average category fairly easily. Missouri has been floundering in the East. The last time they were somewhat relevant, they had Drew Lock, and at this point, they always seem, on paper at least, like maybe a 4 or 5 win team. Maybe they sniff a bowl. Maybe a few years you bring them up to average. But Missouri simply is not recruiting at a good enough level to really contend. And it's a real shame because, they are in a conference they're in a division where you could see a team like Missouri. We saw them in the SEC championship, against Alabama like 6 or 7 years ago. I remember Dorial Green Beckham, the superstar receiver, the highest rated receiver in recruiting history, catching a touchdown in the SEC championship. But recently, they also did sign another superstar receiver, the number 3 overall player, Luther Burden. So maybe Missouri is on the uptrend, but I think they're a 4 or 5 win team next year personally. That's just the way I see it. Auburn is definitely below average. I will put them above Missouri because they're a little bit more talented. But 2 words to describe this program going into the 2022 season: dumpster fire. You're in an extremely tough division. You're facing Alabama. You're facing A&M. Ole Miss is no, pushover. It's a very tough schedule, and you also have Penn State at home. That'll be a huge game for the Big Ten and the SEC. Conference perception on the line in that one. If Penn State loses that game, that'll be terrible for the Big Ten. But I do think Penn State is going to go on the road and beat Auburn. Auburn's a complete dumpster fire right now. They're going to get trounced by Alabama. They have to go to Tuscaloosa at the end of the regular season this year. I know people always say it's a rivalry game. Look at what happened last year. I don't see Alabama making that same mistake. I think Bryce Young's going to be a lot better this time around against Auburn than he was last year. And to me, Auburn, maybe they win 5 games if they're lucky. They're, the whole coaching situation, what an absolute mess, where they tried to get their head coach fired due to clause so they didn't have to pay him. Complete mess right now at Auburn. I'm putting them in the below average tier. Next, we have Tennessee. So Tennessee is an interesting one. I am going to go probably on the back end of above average. You could say I would definitely put them in front of LSU at this point. Although it's arguable. You could put them right here, but for now, I think I'm going to go here. Well, you know what? We'll keep them there. I like Tennessee's offense. Tennessee, to me, is very comparable to Maryland. They've got a high upside quarterback. Hayden Hooker is, he's going to put up probably 35, 40 passing touchdowns at least, a high-powered offense, and a questionable defense, So with Tennessee playing in that tough division, the toughest division in college football, we may have to move them down. I like them above LSU. But, you're looking at maybe 8 wins at the most for Tennessee, I would say. 8 wins at the most. You can move them up. Really? No, I have to keep A&M in front. A&M has such a way more talented defense than Tennessee. That's why I'm keeping A&M in front of Tennessee. Next, we have Arkansas. So Arkansas does return KJ Jefferson, which is a big deal for them. And I am going to put them in the above average tier because, returning quarterback, dual threat beast. You do lose Treylon Burks, but you're getting a really interesting transfer wide receiver that might be able to replace Treylon Burks, Jaden Hazelwood, who was actually the former number 3 overall player from, I believe, the 2019 class. He didn't play very well at Oklahoma and then transferred. He is immediately eligible through the transfer portal for Arkansas this year. So that could be a player to watch for the Razorbacks. And you know what? I'm just putting them here because they returned their starting quarterback. They had a decent year last year, and KJ Jefferson, he's a big boy. KJ Jefferson is very comparable to Malik Cunningham of Louisville. Those big boy dual threat quarterbacks, that's a traditional, college football beast type quarterback. So I could see Arkansas going 8-4, 7-5, maybe at the worst. I think that'd be a little bit down for them. They're a fringe top 20 preseason team, personally, for me. You could make the argument they should be in front of Tennessee. These two teams seem rather interchangeable. Tennessee and Arkansas very similar in terms of 2022. Next, we have South Carolina. So a real mixed bag here. They do have Spencer Rattler, the transfer quarterback. We're going to put them in average for now due to the fact that they are in the East. We are going to move them in front of LSU. Maybe a little bit higher upside. They also got a transfer tight end from Oklahoma that I'm high on. And they also have 2 defensive linemen who were former 5-stars that I'm really, waiting to see if either of those guys will break out. So there is legit 5-star talent on this South Carolina team, but it's just tough to project. What is Spencer Rattler going to do? I mean, Spencer Rattler goes from being the Heisman frontrunner, number 1 overall pick potential, to not even being draftable. He has to transfer out of Oklahoma. What a swing. We know he has legitimate talent, but I just can't move South Carolina at this point up to above average. That's just simply way too much speculation on Spencer Rattler improving. So we're going to keep them at average, but they're a high upside average team due to the transfers they are getting. Next, we have Mississippi State. To me, Mississippi State is going to be a below average, maybe a higher upside below average type team, so I'll put them in the front end of below average. You're looking at maybe 6 or 7 wins with that air raid offense. Will Rogers is returning, and he's thrown a ton of passes at the college level, so that's a lot of experience. People are high on him, maybe being a top quarterback in the SEC this coming year, depending on how good Anthony Richardson is and Hayden Hooker and things like that. We know Bryce Young is the number 1 quarterback in the SEC, but right now I'll put them at the front end of the below average tier. They do return their starting quarterback, but overall, Mississippi State, they haven't been very good, and it's tough playing in the SEC West. It's an unfortunate schedule they get dealt with playing those tough teams, so they're going to be at the front end of below average. I could see them winning anywhere from 5 to maybe 7 games. 8 is really pushing it for this team, in my opinion. Next, we have Alabama, so they're going to be the first team to go into the national title contender. Really, no need to explain this. They return the 2 single best players in college football. Bryce Young, who won the Heisman Trophy last year. Will Anderson, who I think could win the Heisman Trophy this year. Yes, he's a defensive, pass rusher. Will Anderson is ridiculous. He had something like 31 tackles for a loss last year. One of the best defensive players I've ever seen at the college level. He would have been by far the number 1 overall pick if he could have declared for the 2022 draft. Alabama's going to be really good. The one question for Bama, replacing the receivers, you lose John Mechie, you lose Jameson Williams. How do you replace those guys? A lot of unproven talent, but Alabama, they got Eli Ricks through in the transfer portal. He should be a superstar cornerback. They reloaded completely. That's what Nick Saban does. And right now, they're the favorite to win the national title, according to Vegas, and they're going to be the number 1 team, preseason AP poll, I'm sure. So they've got to be a natty contender. Georgia, so I'm sure this is going to be one where, people definitely agree with me. I am not going to put Georgia in the national title contender realm. I simply think there is a 0% chance Georgia wins the national title, and I'm completely transparent on this. If any Georgia fans want to debate me, if you want to bet me, I would love to do it. Georgia's not winning the national title. They're not making the playoff. People don't understand how ridiculously hard it is to repeat. Whether it's any North American sport, NBA, NFL, MLB, college football, college basketball, it is virtually impossible to repeat. So Georgia, I think there's 0% chance Stetson Bennett wins his second national title. I don't think they make the playoff, so I am putting them in conference contender. Yes, they're one of the top 3 most talented rosters in college football, but they are replacing a ton on defense, a lot of inexperienced players. They had 5 first-round picks in the 2022 draft alone from the defense. They had something like 15 total selections overall, which is a draft record. So Georgia, to me, 0% chance to win the national title. I'm totally transparent. I'm willing to bet someone. Really, seriously, people get mad at this. It's like, if you want to bet me, if you really think Stetson Bennett's going to win his second national title, why don't you bet me or something? Seriously, it's not going to happen. I'm just being honest with you guys. People underestimate how hard it is to repeat. It is ridiculous that Georgia has the second best odds right now, according to Vegas, to win the title behind Bama. It's ridiculous. So Georgia, to me, yes, they're extremely talented. Yes, they play in the easier division in the East. You would think theoretically they'd easily make the playoff. But overall, I think there's no way they win the national title or even make the playoff. Personally, I think they lose 2 games in the SEC, one being in the regular season, and then the SEC championship game against Alabama that would knock them out of the playoff. Next, we've got another team with a lot of speculation, so a lot of moving parts here. It is Ole Miss. I think I'm going to go right there for Ole Miss. I can't see them contending. It's just so tough with Alabama in that division. It's just not going to happen. Like, how am I supposed to put anyone else as a conference contender when it's like, oh, you got to beat Alabama to go to the SEC championship? I think they do get Bama at home, and it is interesting that, Jackson Dart is a really good player. He was a fringe 5-star transfer from USC. We know Lane Kiffin is a QB guru. Zach Evans is a superstar running back. They got another good tight end from USC who's a physical freak. So they have some guys, but it's kind of like South Carolina, to where it's a lot of speculation. You're getting a lot of players in the transfer portal. It's tough to speculate and say they're definitely a conference contender due to the inexperience at QB, due to the overall roster influx, and I think a little bit of a subpar defense. Normally, when you've got an offensive-minded coach, the defense tends to not always be up to par, and I think that's what's happening right now at Ole Miss. They certainly recruit better on offense due to Lane Kiffin being an offensive coach. So, you're an 8 or 9 win team. You've got maybe 10 win upside if Jackson Dart's legit, but I just can't go there right now personally. And then the final team we have is Kentucky. I am going to move Kentucky definitely into the above average tier, and I think they fit in really well right there. You could maybe make the argument they should be above A&M, but to me, A&M just simply has too much talent. Now, Kentucky definitely has the quarterback going for it. Will Levis is a very interesting prospect, almost Josh Allen-like, and I've seen him as high as number 2 overall on several draft boards. But to me, they're definitely going to make a bowl game. I see maybe 8, 9 win upside being in the SEC East. That schedule, maybe even, I might even move them up a little bit due to the quarterback. I seriously might. Yeah, we're going to move them up a little bit. I like these rankings. These are my final rankings right now, the tier rankings for the SEC. I'm going to keep it like this. And to me, all these teams like Ole Miss, maybe an 8 or 9 win team. Kentucky, I think Ole Miss could be better than Kentucky, but Kentucky plays in the easier division, so they're going to theoretically maybe win 10 games. A&M, they're just young. Tennessee, they've got no defense. They're very explosive offense, but no defense. Arkansas, to me, low ceiling due to just not a ton of overall talent, even though they do return their quarterback. You could also go Arkansas in front of Tennessee, but we're really nitpicking at that point, guys. These are my official SEC tier rankings for the 2022 season. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.